Today we're going to review the Game Master's Kit for the Legend of the Five Rings RPG. So the GM kit comes in two parts. We have the screen, the GM screen with all the rules and stuff printed on it. Nice little shorthand so you don't have to keep flipping through the book. Although if you do want to keep flipping through the book, we have page numbers, big old page numbers at the top of every section so you can go there for more detail. The other thing we have is the booklet. It comes with an adventure and also a character option, or a set of options. One option, Tortoise Clan. We have the minor clan, Tortoise Clan, statted in here. There's some, in fact, let's start with that. Yeah, players, you're going to want to hear some of this and also hear about the screen, but when we talk about the adventure, you're going to leave. So we'll do it in that order. Alright, Tortoise Clan. We get some info on the clan. How much info? Well, you can go on the Fantasy Flight Games website. Under player resources, there's a bunch of info on the Mantis Clan. It talks about the clan, there's some character creation options. It's for free. Download it, why not? It's the first minor clan that was available for the game. Go get it, and that will give you the same idea. It's roughly the same treatment, same amount of information on Tortoise Clan and their culture as that one did for the Mantis Clan. So about that much info. Not as many character creation options though, which kind of makes sense. Mantis Clan is the biggest of the minor clans. Tortoise Clan is probably the least known, the smallest, the most secretive of all the clans is Tortoise Clan. And they only have just the stats for the clan, as well as a single family and a single school. Now, in the lore, they actually have multiple schools. In fact, those schools, the ones not even mentioned in this book, those are the actual face of the Tortoise Clan samurai. This one, the one in here, is not actually really known to most people, and that's because, spoilers, it's a smuggler school. They focus on smuggling in gaijin, or foreign goods, into the Empire, which is not exactly the most legal thing in the world. Anyway, they are a courtier, however you say it, a talking type school, and the starting ability gives them improvements to talking checks when dealing with low status people. Fallen samurai, or all the various non-samurai castes of people below. You know, merchants, peasants, barakumin, and the gaijin, the foreigners. This is because, well, a couple of reasons. One, it's a harbor city, and there's a fair amount of foreigners running around conducting business, bringing goods in, and just chilling about the town, which technically they shouldn't really be there, but they're there. It's Tortoise Clan. So they're used to dealing with and trading with foreigners. But also, one thing I like about Tortoise Clan is that, in general, they tend to be the most, I guess, low class of all the samurai. You know, Crab Clan is known for being kind of brutish. Of the great clans, they're the least civilized, I guess, of the great clans. A bit rough around the edges. Tortoise Clan is like that, but to an extreme. They will dress like peasants and just walk around the street looking like peasants, but presumably they got their samurai weapons out. Probably the only reason you'd be able to tell they weren't peasants was just the fact that they're carrying weapons. And mostly they just don't give a crap. They just don't care. And because of their more brutish, well, more relatable nature as far as I'm concerned, along with their interactions with the gaijin, in a way they're kind of a hybrid version of my two favorite great clans. Crab Clan, who are, kind of brutish, and also the Unicorn Clan, who are nomad horse people, and they sometimes go out off into past the border and deal with gaijin. A lot of their schools, in fact, are sort of hybridized, taking in gaijin techniques, magic techniques, and the like. And so I am starting to get pretty excited about the Tortoise Clan. I wish there were a bit more options, though. I wish they got roughly equal treatment that the Mantis did. I think they had two schools. That'd be nice. Oh well. Okay, now we're just going to talk about the screen itself, just talk about the rules that it has, and that might give you a sense of just how useful this is as a tool. Not only is this good for GMs, but also I love having a screen as a player because it's like a Cliff Notes version when I'm studying the game. It's easy access around the book because we have page numbers if I want to get a more in-depth look at it. And also, here's just all the information. As a player, if you got the money and you got a cheap deal on this, it might be useful for you, but it depends on what rules you have trouble with and what it has, so let's check that out. First of all, we have a lot of basics that you would find on the character sheets, like turn structure. First you resolve beginning of turn effects, then you set your stance for combat, that sort of thing. Or what the rings are. Air is graceful, cunning, precise approach, subtle and nuanced, and they do that for all those rings. And making a check, what are the steps of making a check? A lot of stuff that's on the character sheet, which I'm glad because normally I have to grab a character sheet and use that as frame of reference get some information out of that as a GM, so one less thing I have to print off for me, so that's nice. We also have skill groups, skills, and approaches. It's the big old chart where on the left-hand side you have a skill group, artisan skills, martial skills, whatever. Then the next column going down the line are all of the skills within that group, with a little description of what it is. So of the artisan skill group, we have aesthetics, composition, design, and smithing, and then design is finery and worn art. Aesthetics, that's the non-utilitarian art. Composition, that's literature and poetry. And the final column shows the 5 different approaches, which is basically how each of the 5 rings interacts with skills from this group. So if you're using the fire ring in a artisan skill group, well, that's the invent approach, where you invent a new piece from raw materials. There's also a bit of information on all the target number, the difficulty types of checks, so all the way from TN0 all the way up to TN8 and over. And it'll have a physical and then mental or social example for each one. So a TN3 is a difficult task. Example, scaling a cliff without rope or finding a well-hidden object. We also have information on what the 5 stances do, which is just more stuff that's already on the character sheet, so as a player, it doesn't really help you there. But common conflict action, the silhouette, size, categories, and examples of each. Silhouette 2 is an adult human or a tengu. Whatever a tengu is, it's silhouette 2. We also have the unarmed profiles for punching, kicking, and biting, which, one, I love that all 3 of those options are statted with their own qualities and stats, types of damage, and it's nice that it's here. At any moment, someone can throw out a fist or a leg or a tooth. So it's nice that we have that right at our fingertips. Examples of spending opportunities. We have an abbreviated version of what you can find in the book. In the book, there's quite a few examples, all sorts of different situations. Here we have 3 examples each for spending a single opportunity or pair of opportunity, or an option that starts from one opportunity and then scales up infinitely. And they do that each for each of the 5 rings: earth, air, fire, water, etc. And also there's one of those sets for any check with any ring. So basically for any ring check you have 6 different ways of spending opportunity right here on the screen. We also have what the advantages and disadvantages are, distinctions, passions, adversities, anxieties. It's a character thing. You pick a character creation, it affects either your dice pool or it can affect your strife rating. And it's not the most intuitive thing in the world, so it's glad they spelled out for you right here. We have range bands. Range 1 is sword range, and it's 1 to 2 yards. Range 2 is spear range, and it's 3 to 4 yards. Range 6 is sight, several hundred yards, that sort of thing. Then we have another section I'm very thankful for, where basically it's a bunch of rules that they don't actually show you the rules, they just show you the page numbers that they're on. Stuff like falling damage, fatigue, terrain qualities, glory, status, different types of checks, resisting checks, investigation checks, competitive or assistance checks. It's just an index for a wide variety of rules that are not going to fit on this screen. I really could have used that in the Star Wars GM screen. I can't count the number of times we had to look up fall damage. All I know is that as soon as we forgot how fall damage worked, that's when we needed it, and we needed the page number to look it up. Never took the time to write it down for my own personal use, of course, because I'm an idiot, but, you know, won't be an issue here. They got it right there. Initiative. Okay, initiative's a little complicated in this game. There's 4 types of structured encounters. 3 of them are combat, then you have intrigue, which are talking. Each uses a different type of skill check for initiative, and then depending on whether you're taken by surprise or you're planning this, then there might be a different stat to modify your initiative roll, and it's a big thing, so we have some help with that. Below that is a section on void points, which are the big awesome currency that every game seems to have. You earn it in a special way, and then you can spend it to do special things. There's some information on that. We have the chart on critical strikes by severity. Severity 5 through 6 is a debilitating gash, and then, you know, a big old mechanic description of the effect that happens when you give them a debilitating gash, and so on. With severities rating from 0 all the way up to over 16. Spoilers, you die at 16. If you're a GM and you want some help on improvising NPCs, well, we have an NPC's demeanor chart, which you can find in the book. Basically, you give it a basic personality. Are they ambitious, detached, shrewd, etc.? And then certain mods to social checks, what happens when they're unmasked, that sort of thing. Improvisation is huge in these games, so the more tools I have at my fingertips for that is wonderful, especially having that right on the screen like that. What they don't have is equipment, unfortunately. I kind of miss that from Star Wars, although it was just a big old like most of one panel was just weapon profiles, and that was nice. Let's take a basic NPC and then give them this weapon with this quality I pull out of my ass. I like that. I use that a lot. I'm gonna miss it, but it's not that big a deal. We gain so much other stuff that's also really useful. Fair trade. And finally, on the last panel, we have the top half is common item qualities. Maybe it's a ceremonial item, or it's cumbersome, or it's unholy, or razor-edged, or snaring, or prepare. You have to take time to prepare it before you can use it again. That sort of thing. And also we have common conditions in the bottom half. Maybe you're bleeding, or incapacitated, severely wounded, lightly wounded, etc. And a little description, a paragraph or two on how all of those work as well. So, overall, and I know I'm slobbing Five Rings Knob quite a bit, but honestly, at least as far as the expansions go and the extra support material, they're kind of killing it as far as I'm concerned. This is my 4th GM screen that I have, maybe the 5th one I've looked at in great detail to a system I kind of knew-ish, at least a decent amount. And of those systems, this is probably the most complicated, the most involved, while also having a GM screen with the best information, the most and best must-needed information that you could have. I'm just racking my brain trying to think of some major thing that I really want to have on here, along with something that it could easily replace that I don't feel like I would really get a lot of use out of. I just can't think of anything. Maybe later I will, but for now, yeah, it's about as good as you could hope for. Most GM screens, the big problem is you want more information on all the different skills and how they work and different specifics as to like what's the chart for pickpocketing and mutants and masterminds or stealthing or something. There's a chart. I don't want to have to look it up every time someone pickpockets, right? Isn't there a chart or something like that? Some skills will have charts on how they work, or jumping with an athletics check. I don't want to have to look that up every single time. You know, there's additional information on the skills that we just never really see. We never see a lot of skills on GM screens. You might not necessarily have every bit of information on the skills here that you want, but certainly have more than you get on most screens. And yeah, it's overall pretty useful. If I were a player never GMing it, I would thank my lucky stars. I have this to study and also at the table. Even if you do get this game memorized, you know, you find out you never even need to open it once during play. You just got those rules down on lock. You're airtight. You don't need it. Well, give it to a player who does. Because odds are someone's not going to know the game that well. At least one person is not going to know the game that well. So yeah, if you're a player, you're about to play this game and a campaign, not just you have the beginner game, you're going to try it out, but you're going to play a campaign at least 6 to 8 months at a minimum, there's no reason not to get a GM screen. Unless you're watching this in the future, at which point they probably have a couple source books out which cater a lot to your clan or the area you're from, at which point that would be the highest priority. But if you get a good deal on this, get it. It's going to be really helpful. I think as a player, maybe like 12 or 15 bucks. That's what I would pay, and I would be very happy with getting it. Anyway, so let's talk about the adventure. The adventure is called Dark Tides and takes place entirely in Slow Tide Harbor. It's an area controlled by the Tortoise Clan, and they got a smuggling ring going on. They bring in goods, which they're technically not supposed to. In fact, there's a lot of things going on in this area that there is not supposed to happen, but it happens. And as an Emerald Magistrate, or the assistant to an Emerald Magistrate that is in your party, or even just a samurai who's on loan to the local government as a favor, which are the default optional setups for this adventure, you may feel the need to want to clamp down on the bad activity happening in this area, but that would look bad. The local government is not going to be happy with that, and so there's some conflict there, which could be nice. By the way, Emerald Magistrate is like a federal investigator, FBI, U.S. Marshal kind of a character. So you could be an Emerald Magistrate, or someone in your group could be. Maybe the rest of you could be Yoriki, I think I'm saying that right, assistant to a Grand Magistrate, or you're just samurai picked to go do the thing. And the thing is, an investigation. Some samurai who have been addicted to opium just sort of up and disappear around the area, so you need to investigate and find them. The first act is nothing but investigation for the most part. You arrive, talk to the people who know the things, they give you some leads, and you follow these leads in this open sandbox investigation, these different areas. There's a couple criminal higher-ups that you can investigate, and at certain points there may be opportunity for the players to solve things with violence, but There are no explicitly potentially violent encounters. Like, there's no, these goons want to pick a fight with you if you don't leave, and so you can either talk your way out of it, or you can just fight them, or you can't talk your way out of it, you just have to fight them. Nothing like that. There are talking encounters, and if you want to go out of your way, you can solve it with violence, or you can bust some people doing illegal stuff right out in the open because they shouldn't be doing it. But like I said, that could lead to some conflicts with the local law enforcement, and it talks about how complications would manifest. So it's mostly talking, non-violent, a lot of investigative stuff. Some players might get kind of stir crazy, especially if you start them off with this adventure. If you want to do that, I don't know if it's necessarily the best way to go. First adventure, I think, should have a nice mix, especially that very first session. There should be some kind of fight or action conflict where the fighter gets to fight, let the talker talk, let the healer heal, let them do their thing very early on. And so if you are doing that, or even if you just have kind of a stir-crazy group, one thing you could do, you could add, if you want to add in a more overtly, potentially combat-involved encounter, while also not feeling too arbitrary and kind of introducing them to a unique part of the Empire here, would be to have some drunken gaijin, foreigners. There's some foreigners running around. They're drunk, they just recently came here, they kind of want to test themselves against the famous samurai. There's some samurai, they're not so tough, blah blah blah. And then there's, either a brawl with fists, or it could go to blades, and that might have certain ramifications, killing foreigners in this area. If you have a group that does get kind of stir crazy, nothing wrong with throwing them a bone, especially if it's early on, if you want. Anyway, after a probably long-ish investigation, they eventually will find a place where the bad stuff is. I don't want to spoil it. They find a place, they do a raid, they do a chase. Act 2 is called Raids and Chases. As you might imagine, it's a bit more action-packed. There's still an investigation component to this, searching for clues, interrogating prisoners, that sort of thing. And then eventually, you find out, or the players find out, where the final conflict is, which is, it's just a big fight. Third act, you got a big fight. There's a cool little twist, which I guess is kind of spoiled, because I already mentioned the fact in another video, which may or may not actually come out yet. Basically, the adventure, Mask of the Oni, which is recently announced, can serve as a sequel to this. And so when you hear when that one's about, it kind of spoils the surprise. So I don't know, don't watch that video, I guess, or don't read about the Mask of the Oni and the basic premise, but that can be a sequel to this. Could even be a much later sequel if you think about it. It doesn't have to be right away. Anyway, one thing about this that is kind of cool that I like are that there are 3 possible villains. Not that because it's an investigation there are multiple suspects, although I guess, yeah, technically. But what I mean is that the GM gets to decide which of the 3 characters are the villain, the boss of this particular adventure. And so you could pick right at the beginning, or you could just see what your players do and what kind of dynamic relationship is formed between them and the other NPCs. They might have a special hate or interesting encounter with one of them that would make it better if that particular NPC were the villain or were not the villain, or whatever, just whatever would make the most compelling story. And at certain points throughout the adventure, they'll say, if so-and-so is the villain, then this person will act like this or do that or that sort of thing. So keep an eye out for that. Although I will say that, well, technically the GM gets to choose which of these 3 characters are the villain. As far as I'm concerned, it's kind of a false choice, really, because if you read the motivations for all 3 of them, only one of them has any kind of interesting motivation or plan for why they're doing this that adds even remotely anything to the adventure. The other 2, they're bad people, they're doing a bad thing because they're bad people and they want to do a bad thing, and that's about it, really. The other one, and it's pretty obvious who, once you read, has at least some sort of interesting thing going on. Not that it's like groundbreaking, you've probably seen it here and there before as a villain motivation, but it's something at least. Unless you and your players just happen to see that a lot at your table, it's a common motivation used or has been in past campaigns or in this particular campaign that you've been running, there's no reason not to pick this character as far as I'm concerned. But overall, it's a pretty serviceable adventure. Like I said, some people might get a bit stir-crazy early on in the investigation. You can inject a bit more action into it, but the players can always just, do that themselves, of course. Rarely are players at a loss to find reasons to screw things up with violence. It's kind of a common player thing. In my experience, it's not often I have to throw my players an action bone every now and again. They'll find it just fine on their own. They'll come up with a whole new one I hadn't even anticipated. And just as a reminder to GMs, that first act is kind of a a big, longish, open sandbox sort of investigation. They can kind of do whatever. So you might want to take a bit more time to prepare for that than you typically do for adventures, just to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible, because you have no idea where they might go from what location to what location. But overall, it's a perfectly fine, solid adventure. The GM screen is very useful, and we get some more character creation options. Also, the Tortoise Clan in general, their history, their culture, it's a lot of fun and really interesting. And overall, just a really great quality product. GMs absolutely buy this. At the very least, you can hand a screen to a player as a quick and easy reference material. Even if you got the book memorized already, buy it just so you can make your life a little easier. GM, what page is that one thing on? Just look yourself. This can become a player screen instead of a GM screen. You get to look at the pretty artwork for a while instead. So GMs definitely buy it, I say, and players, I would strongly consider it. If I were a player, I probably would. I would want my own dice beforehand, but after that, and there is no source book for my clan, which there are no source books released at the moment anyway, but in the future, if there are none for my clan, yeah, after dice, I'd probably get a GM screen of my own, just to make things easier. Unless, of course, there's already like 2 or 3 at your table, which is never going to happen. No player actually buys a GM screen. That's stupid. What player would do that? Oh, shit. That's it for today. If you like this video and want to see more, come back every day for all of December. New video every day. Daily December. Come back tomorrow.